Thank you for coming out. I truly appreciate everybody coming to spend some time with us, and I think everybody will be able to get some ideas about what's going on in the cybersecurity world with our businesses in general, and also just like keeping ourselves safe. So I want to have a little fun with this, and I'm going to start my presentation. Hold on one second. Let me share out my screen. So let me know. I think everybody should be able to see that. Good. Elizabeth's saying yes, so I trust her. Hold on one second, and I just want to get started because there we go. All right, so this is part of a group of trainings or primers that I've done for cybersecurity for a bunch of businesses and different organizations. This is one of the first ones that I do, and then usually we add in more detail afterwards about the actual solutions and things that companies can do to keep themselves safe and get really kind of into the nitty gritty. So this is kind of that first one that starts it all off, and I like to do it and have a little fun with it. So we call this Mythbusters Cybersecurity Edition. So the goal here is to kind of talk about some of the myths that go on in the cybersecurity world, especially with small and medium-sized businesses, about what they believe is going on. Talk about those and find out why people think the way they do, and maybe have a little fun and learn along the way. So thanks again for joining, and we'll get started. So here's my first myth, right? My first myth that we hear almost all the time from almost every businesses, even ones that aren't small, is we're small and nobody wants our data and I have nothing to hide. And I got to tell you, the people that do this stuff, they don't care, right? They don't care how big you are or how small you are, and I'll explain for a second why. So if you were out to rob somebody, and I know you're all good people and would never do that, but if you are, let me ask you a question. Would you choose to go after something like Fort Knox, where you got multiple layers of defense, motion, impact sensors, video cameras, all this kind of professional security? Or would you go after something like this? A house, simple locks, many windows, the owners are off and away. Well, sure, I mean, there's big rewards if you could get into Fort Knox and steal all the gold that was in there, just like if they could get into a big company or a big organization. But it's getting more and more difficult to do that, and in some cases, getting near impossible. So a lot of the cyber crimes have shifted towards the small to medium-sized businesses, and they go, well, listen, they aren't really protecting the house. They're not locking their doors. They don't have alarms on. They don't have all the stuff set up that would be inside some of these higher-end, higher-end securities. And then the second thing about that is the pool of candidates are so large. There's one Fort Knox, and there's 100,000 small, medium-sized houses or small businesses out there. So the pool that they go after is very large. So it's an easy target, and there's lots of them. So that's one of the reasons why. So let's go over that myth a little bit that we see a little bit more. So here's some facts about that. 55% of small and medium-sized businesses have experienced a data breach or a cyber attack. Some of them very small, some of them very big. And a lot of the specific industries are being targeted, whether you're small or not. The manufacturing technology companies are being targeted, manufacturers, because they have information from the Department of Defense and from other on the goods, or people from China and other areas might want to steal those technologies. Technology firms, because someone like myself, we're a stepping stone into getting, I'm a small firm, but I might be a stepping stone to get into one of these larger firms. And we've seen that over and over again. The Target breach that everybody kind of usually knows about, where they stole, what was it, like, 100, I forget, it was millions of credit cards. That number, that attack was done through their HVAC company. So that's why they're looking at the small businesses, because they can get into them sometimes to get to the other ones. We see a lot of municipalities, nonprofits, and educations being targeted because they have generally have really lax security or old computers. They don't budget for this stuff. And the concept of what's called a spear phishing attack, those are targeted attacks aimed specifically at a person inside an organization. Well, those targeted attacks have shifted over the last few years from CEOs of big corporations and the high level people inside these big organizations to actually going towards me and you. They're looking for us. They're specifically creating targeted attacks that make us think we're talking to somebody we know, that or somebody inside our organization is being targeted with our information because we've been breached. So there's a lot of that going on right now. And the number from NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, is that they really think that about 70% of small and medium-sized businesses out there aren't really prepared for this, even though they're being targeted. Whether they don't know or they're really not doing anything about it, it's kind of a staggering number. So, all right, myth number 2. And once again, if you have any questions, I think you guys can put them in the chat, and they'll stop me at any point along the way. So, cyber criminals, the hackers, right? They're just a bunch of losers in their basement. We hear this all the time. We think about, this is kind of what we think about when we think about hackers. We have, that guy sitting in his chair, probably, on his third big gulp. But the truth is absolutely completely different than that. So this is actually more of what you see nowadays for hackers. This is an actual group of a hacking group that was in Malaysia. That was about 1,000 people that they found. They arrested a few hundred of them, but this was set up like a corporation. They were all sitting all there. They had their own computers. They had breaks. They had sign-in sheets and all that kind of stuff, like you would run a business. That's what was broken into, and that's kind of the modern face of what we're up against now. So to quell those myths, here's some facts, right? So they're not just these losers in their basements. In fact, cybercrime is its own business, specifically a $455 billion a year business. So think about that. That's how much money is being made out there because of what they're doing with these businesses. It's huge. It's not going anywhere. It's a growing business. So if you know where to look, anyone these days can become a hacker. All it takes is a little research in Bitcoin. So if you know where to go on the dark web, if you know where to go to some other areas, you can actually buy and become and set up a business based off of hacking, off of ransomware. They have a thing called ransomware as a service. So if I wanted to just say, hey, I know a couple of people that don't have a secure business, I can call up a company and they will do the targeting for me, and I'll make a percentage of whatever they make. It's kind of sad, but there is ransomware as a service, just like I do managed services and you do software as a service and all these other kind of stuff. You can actually go out and buy ransomware as a service. So, but the truth is, most cyber crimes is committed by these international crime syndicates and rogue nations. These are the same criminal entities that we've been dealing with for years, the Russian mafia and that, and also rogue nations, like North Korea and other states like that, Nigeria, stuff like that. So that's where most of it's coming from. So it's usually not, unless somebody's got something that, when you get that hacker in their basement, it's usually that kind of maybe somebody that you pissed off and they want to get somebody to do something back to you. But real cybercrime is actually much more of a business nowadays. So myth number 3, I hear this all the time. I got antivirus, we're protected. We should be totally protected from this stuff, right? But the truth is, we all think that our antivirus is like this, right? We have the Avengers and they're all protecting us and everybody's good and I got this great antivirus and I pay for it. But the truth is, most of our antiviruses are more like this guy. They do an okay job. I mean, like if you had to stop somebody at the door, I bet this guy could probably stop some stuff, but he's not a team working together. He's not really, we put these free antiviruses on our computers. So we're looking for something a little different. And the truth is, the modern concept of antivirus has changed, and we'll talk about that in a second. So just so you know, this is a recent survey. There's about 33% of the people talked that experienced, found that 30% had experienced a ransomware attack in the past year, sorry about that. But of those organizations, at least 50% of them had multiple solutions like antivirus or other kind of firewalls and protecting them, and they still became victims. So we have to talk about new methods and new ways of doing that, because we've already kind of put these things in place, but they don't really work the same way. So a lot of the traditional antiviruses, they don't really protect against these ransomware stuff. And these free unmanaged softwares, they're not really giving us the information that we need in real time to know whether or not our businesses are protected. So this new kind of protection that's coming out is a solution called EDR, which is endpoint detection and response. And what that basically means is, instead of what virus checkers did in the past, which was, hey, I'm going to run a piece of software. Let's check to see if that is a good piece of software against all these other pieces of software I've already seen, all these other viruses that I've already seen, and says, oh, well, that doesn't look like good code. Let me stop it, alert you, and try to clean it up. Well, in the endpoint and detect and response world, which is the new products that we're starting to come out, they're actually not just doing that. They're not just looking at what software or what like this database of stuff that's already happened. They're looking at the history of that computer in kind of an AI model, and they're saying this computer always does these kind of things, or these machines always do certain things, and now all of a sudden they're sending data out to China, and they've never done that before. Maybe we should alert something, or maybe we should stop that computer from doing it. So it's building a profiles on your machines and what are going on, and saying, hey, well, if these machines had never tried to run this type of software at all, whether or not it's good, maybe we need to shut it down, or maybe it's getting it's downloading information from sites that it never touched before. We need to locate. So it's actually looking at the detect and response model, and also being able to shut itself down from the rest of your network so that it doesn't affect other machines. So that's kind of one of the ways we want to talk about that. So here's another one we hear all the time. I got strong passwords. That'll keep the criminals out, right? Okay, well, let's start talking first about what actually is a strong password, right? So this is just a funny meme. Everybody who knows me knows I love memes, but I'm actually going to use this, right? So I changed my password to incorrect, so that when I forget my password, my password says it's incorrect, right? So here's the truth, though. What a strong password means, right, is if we actually use the word incorrect as our password, how long do you think it would take for someone to hack that password? So incorrect, it's actually a pretty long password. It's 9 characters, right? So it's 9 characters, lowercase letters. It would take less than 2 minutes for somebody to hack that password. And in fact, it would probably take even less than that because it's an English language word. So they would probably get it even quicker than that. But we see that strong passwords that we want to talk about, really, if we're really starting to talk, we want to talk about stuff that can be hacked in years. Anything that's months or days is probably not good enough. So we're looking at 11 characters here. Or 9 characters with really uppercase, lowercase, that kind of stuff, to create strong passwords. So what does that mean? So strong passwords do help, but they're much more powerful when they're combined with other measures. Those other measures are two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. You start seeing that now. You start seeing that on a lot of the websites. They send you a text message when you log in, or you have to set up some kind of extra code to get into that account. Something you have and something you know is kind of that access, but also access notifications. That's saying, hey, you never logged in from this machine anymore. You never logged in this machine before. We're going to send you a notification. Or every time you log into as a certain account, maybe an administrator account, you're going to get a notification that something went on. And using those methods together are actually much more powerful than just passwords alone. And sometimes, and we've seen this, sometimes these extra complicated passwords that we make people do, they actually hurt security, because people wind up reusing the same passwords over and over and over again because they can't remember them. And then you get that, well, I put my sticky note under the keyboard. And we see these sticky notes. I've seen them everywhere in our clients, on the screens, and in areas actually, like, okay, well, I'm doing a presentation, and the sticky notes on their desktop with the notes on it and the passwords and those kind of things. So that actually sometimes can hurt security. So we look towards applications like LastPass and RoboForms. These are password repositories where you can keep passwords in a secure place, and you can auto-generate complex passwords for every account, but you don't have to remember them all, because these help you log into those accounts and they can be kept secure. So we really do recommend that moving forward, besides the two-factor authentication and the multi-factor authentication. So here's myth number 5. Well, I did get hacked, but at least I have a good backup, right? And we hear this all the time. And so the truth about that is that really the most of the backups that we have and the way we're backing up our data is either unorganized or it doesn't work at all. And we see this constantly with our clients. So just once again, my funny memes that I like, but to be honest with you, that second picture, that is almost exactly what I walked into a large manufacturing client who was doing that kind of stuff. Their backups were being done on USB keys, on disks, on tapes, on drives that anybody could pick up and steal, that were being put in their car. So it's not unusual that people are still doing these kind of backups. And the truth about those backups is, besides the fact that they're really insecure, we found that most people never test whether or not their backups work. And when they have an incident, it's usually too late. They say that between 7 and 10% of all backups will fail. That means that they just don't work. But we've seen a failure rate through a lot of our clients over the years of about 50% of our clients that were doing it themselves. Oh, I was backing up and there's a green light that said it was good every time, and we find out they were only backing up one file of all of their files. Or or the tapes don't have all the information on them, or we say tapes, but nobody really uses that anymore. But even the USB keys and the Windows backups and all that kind of stuff, they have a pretty high failure rate when they're not set up and monitored well. And the backup should be encrypted. The person that I was talking about that was doing the backups in this client, this manufacturing client that we had, they were just making a regular copy of that backup and throwing that backup in their car and saying, I have an offsite backup. Their car gets stolen, and everybody's got that data. And this is Department of Defense data. This is what they call CUI. So you got to make sure that they're encrypted as well. It's not only the fact that they're backed up, but that you have it so that somebody can't steal it, right? And the types of backups really do matter. So there's different types. There's offsite, there's full replication backups. That means you're backing up the entire computer, not just the files that are in there, so that instead of just having to go look for the files, quickly you can rebuild the entire machine and be back up and running. And there's disaster recovery versus business continuity. Business continuity says, hey, my business, I can't be down for more than 15 minutes. So I need to be up and running quick. And business continuity allows you to set up backups that will automatically restore your machines within sometimes 2, 5, 10 minutes, as opposed to a disaster recovery, which says, listen, if the whole place kind of goes kaboom, or if I have a fire or something like that, I can go and I can restore it. It takes a couple of days, but I'll be all right. And you got to look to your business as to what the proper type of backup for you for your business is. Some people don't need the cost of business continuity, but certainly disaster recovery, I think everybody needs. So here's myth number 6. Cyber attacks only come from external actors, right? So let's talk the difference between what we see in movie hacking. This is kind of what you see all the time. I'm going to overclock the Unix and this basic DDoS root, and we're going to get into their machine, and all sorts of extra kilobytes are going to be in backdoors and all that kind of stuff. And we hear that all the time. You watch it in the movies or Mr. Robot and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is, this is kind of really more what happens a lot. And that's that kind of social engineering hacking. That's that, hey, I work for Techworks and we're your IT provider. Can you give me the password to your computer? That stuff happens all the time. That also happens not just through somebody calling you up, but through working them through emails. Hey, it's John from Techworks, and I'm sending you an email. Can you email me back your password? A lot of that actually is what's called social engineering, and it comes from internal to your organization. So here's some facts about that. All right. Really, the largest cybersecurity threats are inside your companies. They're you, they're me, they're the people, our users and our vendors. So the IBM found that 60% of all attacks were carried out by insiders, right? Some of them with malicious intent and some of them with inadvertent actors. So people are sending, let's say cyber attack, they're gathering your data before they leave to go, you're letting them go or something like that, and they're gathering data that's important to you and they're stealing it and putting it somewhere else. Or inadvertently, they're getting a phone call and giving out passwords to people, or letting people walk into your building that shouldn't have access. That stuff happens all the time. So the sad part about that, or say sad, is that at least a third of employees responded that they received no or little or no cybersecurity training at all. And only about 17% said that they received a lot of training. So I think we need to talk about getting more trainings, doing more things like this, and actually getting training programs or getting ourselves trained up. It doesn't take a lot to do it, to get the basics and to lower our footprint and to get our people trained. So, and don't forget your vendors. A lot of your vendors have lax policies and we let them in. Our accountants, you'd be surprised that our accountants, I give them full access to my QuickBooks database, or I give them remote access, and their machines are vulnerable too. So we got to think about that. It's not just our employees or us, it's sometimes also our vendors. So here's number 7. Windows desktops are the only devices that get hacked, or we're safe because we use Apple devices. So here's the truth. That's really a false sense of security. The truth is, So let's look at that. So the truth is that this is kind of the real world about right now. I mean, it's a little bit behind because it's 2018, but if you look at the type of devices that are getting hacked right now, it's Google Android. That's your cell phone, right? That's your, if you're using a Samsung or any type of other Google Android cell phone, those right now are the most hacked products out there, or the ones that are have the most vulnerabilities and have the most code being written against them. So we got to take a look at that. And then you see Acrobat. I mean, who thinks Acrobat or Android Reader might be on the top of this list, right? Windows is still up there, but iOS is right behind it. And then you have things like Google Chrome, and you start talking about things like IoT devices, right? So this is your TV, right? So I actually owned a TV. I got a check for $37 back from Vizio because my TV was spying on me, right? So I won a class action lawsuit, and because they got spied on, I got a check for $37. But so most of your IoT devices, that's everything that you're putting in your businesses. We're adding these things to our businesses now, whether they be Alexa or smart TVs or smart switches or smart thermostats. Those things are vulnerable products too. So we got to think about that. So let's take a look. Cyber attacks on IoT devices, not just the Windows devices, not just the Apple devices or anything else. They were up 300% in 2009, and even Apple exploits are up 270%, right? So just like desktop systems, any ordinary device that is connected to the internet is also hack prone. Sorry. And there's a new world of all these internet connected cars, manufacturing, home appliances, smart homes. They're all vulnerable, and listen, some of this stuff, it's really not up to your control to fix, but we got to be aware of it. These manufacturers right now that are putting these products out for us, they're not doing a great job securing them. There's no real standards out there yet. So we go out and we buy something because it's I want that connected microwave, and it doesn't really care about whether or not it's keeping you safe right now, or what it's doing to what kind of data it's sending. So we have some learning to do on that level, and we have some standards that we got to start holding our manufacturers of these products to. That being said, there are some ways that we can kind of help out in there. So I get this one all the time. Well, I got insurance. If something happens to me, we'll get covered, right? Truth is, your insurance really won't cover you. No funny slides on the insurance one. I couldn't come up with anything really funny because it's just insurance, right? But so there's different types of policies, and most people's business policies that they have will not cover them for almost any type of cybercrime, with the exception of some very basic theft. So you have to understand that there's really cyber liability policies. There's what's called a crime policy. So if you have a data breach or a loss, this is what a cyber liability is going to cover. A crime policy really is if you put out there and you actually, money transfers is one of the biggest things that are going out there, wire fraud and those kind of things. Someone targets you and you actually go out there and send them money. Well, that's not really a cyber breach. That's really you doing something wrong. And that's what this kind of crime policies is. And sometimes these crime policies, that's one of those things that might be in your current business policy, but you want to look for that. And then these professional liability insurances have to do with your employees exposing private data in error and maybe covering you for that. So I recommend that, whoever you use for insurance, you start talking to them a little bit about this. So let's talk about this. Most business insurance don't cover cyber incidents or data breaches. The average cost is about $38,000 for an SMB to overcome a data breach. Business impacts, obviously, if people find out about it, if you can't get your work done, there's other impacts. 60% of those businesses are left severely impacted. But personally, I believe that cyber insurance is currently the best deal in the industry. They're still not asking a lot of questions about how well you're doing your cybersecurity, and the prices are pretty low. So depending on the size of your organization, you might even be able to get it a little bit cheaper than that, but $250,000 in cyber coverage, which covers a lot of different things. It might cover someone like myself to help out and clean up that industry. It might help paying Bitcoin if you had to. That runs about $1,500 a year. So it's something you want to look at. So here's two arguments I've heard all the time. I put them, they're two different myths, I guess, but they're actually the same. We've moved everything to the cloud, or we don't use the cloud, so we're safe. And I've heard both of them, and it's kind of like weird. Oh, well, I keep everything, in my computer in my office, and everything's safe over there, and I don't put anything on the cloud. Or we don't have anything in our office anymore. We moved it up to our cloud vendor, and everything's safe. And the truth about that is the cloud safer? And so what is the cloud? Well, really, the cloud is just really somebody else's computer, So there's nothing more mystical about that than it's somebody else's computer, and if somebody else isn't taking their computer in the taking care of their computer in the cloud, then that might load that might bode itself to you not being secure or you having some kind of incidents. So we moved everything to the cloud. So here's some of the things that, what we talk about. Being in or out of the cloud has little bearing on your threat level. Both models have inherent securities. Whether you're keeping stuff local to your computer or on your machine, or you're going up to the cloud, you have to look at your cybersecurity threat to both of them. Neither of them are 100% secure, and both of them have reasons why you might do one or the other. There's almost no way, or none, or there's almost okay, no way that none or all of your IT is in the cloud. So we've had clients, I put everything in the cloud. Well, almost all businesses do some work with some kind of a hybrid model, and they need to protect both. That means I have a computer, I put all my stuff up in SharePoint or OneDrive or Dropbox, and it's all up in the cloud, but there's a copy on your local machine. There's copies that you're sending out to clients or users or other stuff like that. So you really have a hybrid model, and you got to think about it that way. And it's important, really important, to know the cyber practices of your cloud vendors. Many are not as secure as you think. I'll tell you, this happens, and I get scared more often than not. A lot of these software companies that we use to use these products, the software as a service products, they're not hosting their stuff in stuff much more secure than you would. So it's really important that we ask them the questions of, where is my data being stored? How are you securing it? Those policies and procedures that of the software vendors that we're using, that might be the software. We had a client years ago that was using it was a golfing, they ran their golf club with it. And when we went and we met with their vendor, that vendor was keeping basically all of their servers were sitting on a floor in their office. And I was like, how could you guys sell this as, the best product out there in the market, and you're keeping all of your servers basically on a floor in an office in out on Long Island? So you got to be careful a little bit about that, and what the cloud is and where your data is. So here's myth number 10. That all sounds expensive, and I don't have the budget for that. So obviously we hear this all the time. I have no budget for all of that. My business barely can do this, or I'm not making enough money to do that. But so the question is do we really want to improvise with our security, or do we want to take a holistic approach? Obviously, once again, just another funny meme, but a little bit of reality here. So what does that mean that I don't have a budget for it? Well, yes, when you think of IT and security only as an expense, and you budget $0 for it, then it's going to come off that way. And the truth is that we don't want to look at IT and security as an expense. We want to look at it at other ways. We want to look at the cost to your damage and of reputation, loss to business, lawsuits, intellectual property. That can be huge, much more than your budgeting. A lot of industries have grants and loans to increase security. But also, by doing these things, we see that as something that helps businesses become a market differentiator. If I'm looking now at an accountant, and we just discussed what we discussed, now you're going to ask that accountant, well, how do you keep my data secure? Well, if they have a good answer, if they have their policies and procedures together, and they can hand that over to you and say that, you have a differentiator in the market, and you definitely can boost your customer confidence that you're looking out for them. So we really look at, done right, anything that has to do with your technology and using policies and procedures like this really should give you an IRR, a return on your investment. And we see that a lot. The clients that went out and started doing HIPAA and other stuff like that, they complained a lot about it at first, but once they started using it and they had organization built up that comes around that stuff, they really saw advantages to it. So we see that it could be actual benefit to your organization. Wait, I got a bonus myth, right? I know I was only supposed to do 10, but if Elizabeth says yes, I'll do 11. All right, good. So here's my bonus myth. And maybe this one's a little self-serving because I am the IT provider here and we talk about this a lot, but my current IT is protecting us. They told me so. Hear this all the time, every time we go out to a client. So are you really sure what your IT does? I don't care if you're one person, you have somebody helping you out, if it's your nephew that does computers, or if you have somebody on staff for IT, or if you have an outsourced IT. You really got to understand what they do, because if you don't, the only way to know that is to have an audit done, right? So what am I talking about? A professional audit looks like this, basically. We go out and we ask a lot of questions, and we do scannings of the networks, and we do other things that go out and say, how are you in all these different areas of, sometimes it's just cybersecurity, but it also might be business processes and other things too. And by having an audit done, you actually get to know where you stand against other organizations, other companies. What are you missing? And then what do you need to focus on? Like, I know I don't have a huge budget to do everything, but two-factor authentication might be worth the money right now versus some other issue, or organization, or securing your and encrypting your backups, right? Let's focus on the right things. So that concept that IT really knows what's going on. And I have 2 more slides after this, but so just as a concept that cyber threats require a real multidimensional strategy, it's not just the cybersecurity piece. You have to take in your personnel, your operational security, like how, what you're looking at as your organizations, contingency planning, physical security, and privacy. All of those have to be taken into account, and it's not just an IT issue. So cybersecurity, it's not just a technology issue. The management has to get involved in it. Your staff has to get involved in it. So it's not just something that IT can take care of. So if you think that your IT is just taking care of your cybersecurity, you're probably wrong. Most IT staffs are overwhelmed with day-to-day issues. They can't focus on cybersecurity. It's a specialty, and sometimes even the best engineers can't do it alone. So if you're not working on those cybersecurity standards, if you don't have that kind of roadmap that I was showing you before, based off of NIST or HIPAA or whatever your industry does, then you probably don't have a good security plan. And if you're not 100% sure, get an audit. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it, and I'm very, very happy to take questions. And I do actually have more myths, but I'm not going to put them out right now.
I thought that was amazing, and I appreciated your memes. You actually made what could be maybe a dry topic, not dry at all. We had one question about cloud, saving to the cloud, but I think you answered it later in the presentation. It was from Makola at Teachers Federal Credit Union. I apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly. If your question was not answered, please, you can unmute yourself and ask, or put it in the chat and we'll let them know. I thought that was amazing. I felt attacked a little bit when you talked about passwords, because I am very bad with my passwords. I have like 4 that I use over and over, which I know is terrible.
Well, so, like I said, listen, we all do the same things, but there's ways to make it secure.
They're hard, like they have symbols and stuff in it.
Well, here's the thing about passwords, right? So the problem with passwords, and so we have a software goes out there that scans the dark web, and what we mostly find, and we did this on Techworks and our team too, and I had a couple passwords that were out on the dark web that had been breached from, so you go out and you sign in with that password to, I don't know, Yahoo or some other organization, and then they get breached, and your password, that's great, it's got 95 characters in it, but it's sitting there out on the dark web. So somebody goes, hey, I got her information here, I got some, her information, I know that she goes to this hospital, I got her password, I might be able to log into her portal. And that's kind of what they do with that stuff. So sometimes it's that changing those passwords at some kind of a regular basis. What we do, like I said, is we go out there and we'll scan your accounts, and doesn't mean we're going to catch everything, but at least it says, like, I went there and we looked at, and specifically, and I'll call out my wife because she's not on the conference, but she had the same password breached probably about 15 times that she hadn't changed on all of her sites. So I was like, I called her up. I'm like, wife, you got to change all of these passwords.
I just posted a free site called Have I Been Pwned? That's the non-corporate deep dive that we're able to do. If you want to just check your own personal emails, it's free and fun. And when I say fun, I mean not so fun, because you're going to go, oh crap, my LinkedIn password from 2014 and things like that.
So the good part about that, or the real part about that, is using two-factor authentication kind of really helps with that. If you want, like, using repetitive passwords is great. When you add two-factor authentication to it, the necessity to change that password all the time kind of goes down, because you're getting a secondary check on top of that. So the password's good, but as long as your phone's not breached and other stuff. So you're just adding these levels, and sometimes levels that don't cause too much disruption, obviously, because that's always with the cybersecurity world and all the things we're trying to do is we got to keep your businesses, you got to keep productive, but you also got to try to keep safe. So we got to kind of balance that stuff. So things like two-factor authentication or other things that, like, I use something called a YubiKey on my computer. It's an extra little chip like the banks use or other stuff. So I can just push a button on the side instead of having to get a text message every time. But there's methods to do that.
Somebody's asking how often they should change their password.
Without two-factor authentication, if you're using it, I would recommend it a minimum of every 6 months for most of your sites. If you're not using two-factor authentication, if you're using two-factor authentication, you probably could go out about, in fact, in some cases with two-factor authentication, Microsoft and other players are saying you don't have to change your passwords at all. That being said, the concept of what I talked about, RoboForms and LastPass, if you're using those kind of services, you click a button, it generates a random password for you. And if you have those all separated between all your different accounts, then the chances of you cross-contaminating, which is my Yahoo account is the same account I use for Gmail or for my doctor's office or whatever, if you don't do that cross-contamination, then changing your passwords might not be, at certain intervals, might be a little bit less necessary.
If you guys want to, Alex and I are just kind of chatting back and forth. Diana's on the call too. She and her team, we always love to run complimentary dark web scans for any businesses. If you guys are interested, it's, again, kind of shocking the information that you'll find, especially if you have employees, because what'll happen is you think you're following all the practices, but turns out Marion Accounting uses a basic password and uses the same one for all your bank websites. And then you're kind of surprised one day when you do deal with some sort of wire fraud or something like that. So if you do want, reach out to myself or Chris or Diana. There's a few of us from Techworks on the call. We like to do that because it's really, it benefits you. It's also educational, and maybe peace of mind. You can sleep at night knowing that you're safe or not, and then you can address it. Education never hurts anyone.
I have a question. So much of what I'm doing these days being digital, I'm being asked over and over again for digital signature. How concerned should we be as far as how we give our digital signature out?
This is one of those topics that I kind of understand. I mean, the depends on the way you keep. So if you really want to do it right, digital signature should not just be this kind of image that you keep inside of Adobe or something like that. So I don't know how you're signing your documents, but usually a digital signature done correctly has kind of a two-factor model to it, where you go to stamp a document, you sign it. Now that's one method of signing documents. So when you talk about digital signatures, you could talk about using something like a DocuSign, a program like that to sign. Well, those are pretty safe. They take information from your computer and from your login to know that you are kind of you. And so those, if you're using those kind of products like a DocuSign or something else, if you're just digitally signing, whether it be whether it be like I actually have this on my computer. I have an Adobe my signature saved into an Adobe account, but I have to put a password in to get that access to it. To be honest with you, you got to know what you're signing, because the truth is that I could find your signature just about anywhere and stamp it for you. So I don't know how much, like I said, I don't know how worried I would be for those things, because I don't know how much they're going to come back to us. That being said, it depends on what you're signing. I would really say is kind of an important piece, because if anything that you've ever signed, I could pull that off of even just by scanning it. I could pull your signature off and pretend that I'm your signature. So I guess it's kind of I don't know that it's as much a technology issue. It is a little bit, and I don't know I have a great answer to your question. It really depends on what you're signing. And how you're signing those documents.
Well, obviously, just doing purchases on something like Square, you have the opportunity to just, scribble your name on there with a digital signature.
Yeah.
But then on contracts and things like that, I'm in the construction industry. So as I work through different pay requests, you have to have a certificate, backing up your signature so that you can sign all your reports on a monthly or quarterly basis. And, I'm always concerned about giving that digital signature. Where is it going? Are we going to fingerprints, retinal scans? I mean, this is definitely, an industry that, working in construction documents, especially when I have to sign NDAs, and, it's a situation where I sat in on an SBDC contractor college with Farmingdale College, and luckily we had Skanska Construction come in as some of our tutors for our modules, and they told us that the FBI was sitting with them talking cybersecurity, to the financial CEO. And he came in to talk to us about finances. He goes, if you take nothing away from today's class, pay attention to cybersecurity and look at cyber insurance.
It's definitely important. And like I said, the signature piece has to do with, so this goes back to us trusting our vendors. So when you're using Square and you sign that data, it goes into a database somewhere that hopefully they're encrypting and keeping safe, and that's a copy of your signature. And I do think at some point that we should really be, we should be changing over to another two-factor authentication model with signatures or credit cards. So like when you go to Europe and you sign for your credit card receipt, or you put your credit card in there, you not only have that little chip that we have now, but you got to put a PIN code in for every credit card transaction, and that PIN code matches the signature matches, and so they can go back and actually say that it was really you. Right now, we don't have that stuff. For some reason in the United States, we have decided that wasn't that important on the credit cards, and I don't think people are really ready for two-factor authentication off of their signatures, but I think that's the way it kind of should go. It really should be that we have some, that we buy or are part of some method to secure that that's not us. Whether it goes, listen, I don't like all the biometric stuff. I don't like all of that stuff either. There's ways to do it without it, but the easy way is going to be biometrics at some point.
Okay.
Say, Chris, here's the question. I have a one-person owner-operated business. So there's basically only one person touching the computers. So I buy a new computer. It has Windows Defender. It has file history. I rotate the drives and put them off-site. What would you say is the biggest thing I'd be missing in terms of?
Well, I mean, obviously, I don't necessarily, not that, to be honest with you, Windows Defender is not a terrible antivirus, but I would, so it does do an okay job. I probably would still purchase a more professional one, something like a WebRoot, or, there's other ones out there. I try to stick with the ones that are not based out of Russia, like Kaspersky or other ones. So I would look at maybe a little bit more professional virus checker or EDR kind of software. Now that being said, if you think you're doing a good job, like I don't know how you say you're backing up your data, most importantly is that every once in a while you test to make sure that data is there. And like I said, it should really be encrypted so that if somebody breaks into your house, even as one computer, that stuff is not able to be. So your computer itself should be encrypted, which you should be buying as a business level computers that have something called a TPM chip in them. And that TPM chip allows that machine to be encrypted all the time. So a lot of us will go to Costco and be like, oh, I can get this computer for $500 and my IT guy wanted to sell me something for $1,000. Well, a lot of that sometimes has to do with the security measures that are on that machine. A business class computer that has encryption built into it is a little bit more expensive than something that you get off the shelf. So you want to look at that, and you want to make sure that your computer that you're using has a TPM chip. So if it does get stolen, it's not like, because if I stole your computer and you wasn't encrypted, I could pull that hard drive out, plug it into my computer, and have all your data and just look at it like it was yours, So you want to start with that. You want to make sure your backups are encrypted, definitely. And then you want to basically do things like your passwords and doing two-factor if you're saving. I mean, I do recommend saving to a cloud, something like a Carbonite or Intronis, or there's other ones that we use. I back up things like that, and keeping those safe. The a lot of people use Dropboxes and they think that Dropbox is a good backup. Well, that's not a terrible backup, but the problem with those is that sometimes you change a lot of data and then you go to your Dropbox and all that stuff is changed too and you don't have enough versioning. So we do recommend a more traditional Carbonite kind of a backup for that individual user.
Very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Does anybody else have any other questions? Oh, it looks like Mitch asked, what about an NAS system?
A NAS, a network attached storage. So depending on your business model, I mean, there's a, nowadays when you don't need a lot of businesses don't need servers anymore. They're putting most of their stuff up in the cloud. They're using Office 365. They might move over to something called a network attached storage. That's that's basically, it's basically an online hard drive that you have access to. It's like kind of quasi server, and those things can be good, but they also need to be set up properly. What we find with a lot of people that have network attached storage devices is that they set them up and they don't put any encryption on them. So if that device gets stolen, it's the same thing as stealing a hard drive. I can log right into it and get it. They don't set up security on them, usernames and passwords. Those network attached storage devices are good for doing backups, but we also find that clients that have network attached storage devices and they're backing up locally to those ones, they have no offsite. So what happens? Unfortunately, I mean, and I say this unfortunately, but we've Techworks, in our history, we've been hit by a tornado and I think 2 floods. So, if that whole building kind of went kaboom, then, you want to make sure that that network attached storage box has some kind of a backup offsite. You really need to figure that out. I think people use that network attached storage as a little bit of a crutch, but they don't think about the implications of and like I said, we've seen it both with our clients and ourselves that sometimes the whole building's not there.
Thank you. Any other questions before we wrap it up? I want to be, Joe has a question. You just have to unmute yourself.
Thank
Okay.
you. Actually, I want to say everything you've said, Chris, has been amazing. And I have made the mistakes of the backup thing in every possible way. From I had servers in a room and then I had a roof leak and it leaked into that room on the servers. Thousands of dollars. So people don't realize what the expense is to send it out and see if you can get the data back. And then I moved the computer from a next door suite to the next suite, and the backup, now a new kind of backup, was set up and it was never checked. And then I think what I realized probably, and it wasn't able to be fixed, I sent it out. And I think what it was simple as, what people don't even realize, is just a simple tower. The person who vacuums, I think, kept hitting the tower and it's possibly that messed it up.
Yeah, always something like that. See it all the time. But
So
thank you for the real world stories. And I hope we can maybe some of the stuff can help you, not make those mistakes again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. I want to be conscious of time. I know everybody's very busy. And Chris, thank you again for this. I learned a lot from it. Scary stuff, but good stuff. Good to know. And again, thank you to Angela and People's Alliance Federal Credit Union for sponsoring this. Just a reminder, the Miller Center is here. We did not stop during the lockdown and we have not stopped. So we're here to help anybody with anything that we can, even if it's connecting you to Chris or somebody else in the community that can help. So thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Enjoy it.